Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. March 17th, 2019. Another episode of White Belt MMAS. The S is for sciences, mixed martial arts and sciences, that is. Henok Elias, Rastin Karami. We have a lot to talk about today. I think it'd be great if we started off with a big picture kind of philosophical discussion about decisions and head to toe, really. Like, what are they?
But first,
what is their roles?
But first, should we discuss how maybe we should be Soma? Or are we going to stick to the game plan?
What is that? Is that the drug from the Aldous Huxley novel?
No, I think we'll
Brave New World?
I think we'll just throw that as a teaser. Soma. Think about that.
Don't let him bait you.
But in terms of, you want to talk about the decisions last night, or you want to go through?
I want to talk about decisions, but before we go into the specifics of the UFC or boxing or kickboxing or the grappling exchanges, gi and no gi, what do you think about decisions?
Oh, wow. That's real deep.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's what the space is for.
I think what really personified the argument was, I know that it wasn't the opener fight and it wasn't even the main event, and it was the co-main event, and that was Gunnar versus Leon Edwards, and it really breaks it down very easy for me. And that's how you view a fight. Is a fight over when the time is up, or is a fight over when a man is unable to continue? And I know that Gunnar believes that it should be to the finish, and whereas Leon is playing it by the books and thinks that it's like, if I do enough in the time period that's told to me, then I get the win.
Quick question on that. Is that status quo or the future ideal? So are you saying Gunnar and Leon, their ideal MMA situation, if it were to be forming like their own promotion, their own rule set, would be that? Or are you saying given the current rule set, this is what they strive for in the cage?
I think that's the second, the latter for sure. And I think that they even interviewed Gunnar, or they were speaking about it, that he actually said in an interview that that's how he believes a fight should be. And it really played out exactly like that question popped up in my head, because Leon dominated the first two rounds. Third round came up, and then he was pretty much, I think I'd give him the third round as well. And then the final minute, Gunnar ends up in mount, and it was looking really bad, and the time ran out, and it looked like Leon wasn't doing anything. He wasn't, trying to get the finish he was just stalling. And if you go by Gunnar's philosophy, he's probably going to win that fight at the end of the day. And I tend to think that, maybe Leon would fight differently if he knew prior what type of fight it was going to be. He's just fighting with the rule set he's given.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what is the correct way in your opinion?
So judges, doctors, referees, mostly quacks. Mostly charlatans, mountebanks, snake oil salesmen.
You sound like Nassim Nicholas Taleb.
So, we're similar.
Yeah.
But what I'd like to say is that I'm deeply disturbed by decisions. I think, like many things in this world, decisions should be abolished. And the reason I say that is, if the postmoderns have contributed one thing to our knowledge base, it's about how much myriads, or how many myriads, or how much just a plethora of interpretations and how much subjectivity is in our world. And to me, I think your time, my time, the fans' time, the commenters' time, the analysts' time is getting sucked. There are a few things in this world I hate more than what I view as useless time sucks. I think when we can be debating the merits of fighting, which styles are more efficient, which are more stylistic, hinting at the title of this podcast, the arts and the sciences, I think we're wasting away our time. We're tossing it in a trash basket to have these basic discussions about decisions. And I really think of all the remedies and proposals I hear people have, I don't think any of them are good in regards to, what could make it better. Because ultimately, these people, the referees, the judges, the doctors, have a certain amount of discretion, and whatever worldviews and perceptions and thoughts and philosophies they have go into that. And so they rule differently. That's one of the things you and I were discussing kind of before we got into podcast mode today, is that people can do things differently. And a little bit of discretion is fine, but there's far too much discretion. There's far too many disparities. And so I think if you leave things to finality, and we've talked about this before, right? You know, if you take away gloves, if you take away rounds, if you take away weight limits, these are things that would allow more finishes to happen. If you counted everything that was not a submission or a KO or a TKO, if you counted that as a draw, I think their incentives change. You talked about the incentive of Leon Edwards would be different.
Right.
I think the incentive of every fighter would be different if you adjust the rule set. But given the current rule set, honestly, it's tough. If you ask me about that specific fight, I personally, if I was a judge, in my subjective opinion and view of the world, I would have ruled it 28-28 each. I would have given the first round 10-9 to Leon Edwards. The second round, 10-9, Leon Edwards. And he was able to show that he knows how to grapple. He even got
He out-wrestled Gunnar in the first round, I would say.
Arguably, I think it's easier to do defense more than offense, and what he did was more defensive
He took
wrestling.
Gunnar's back.
He did through a counter defensive move. So, you know, you could, you know, controlling the cage or being the floor general, kind of pushing the pace is one of the many factors that goes into judging. But in any event, I give it to him, but I don't give it to him 10-8. Right. Because it's not like he ran over to Gunnar and threw him
I'm
down.
not disagreeing with you.
He did it on a good counter move.
10-9 is fine. 10-9 is fine.
So I would do that for both. And then he clearly outstruck him. I don't think anyone debates that he outstruck him.
Right. Gunnar was having a hard time getting a range on Leon.
Even in the third round, in the first few minutes, Gunnar was losing it. But he got to the point where finally the many attempts at taking down finally wore through. The grappling is a slow and steady tortoise-like race with the hair. And he eventually wore him down. He got past his guard a lot quicker than he did throughout the rest of the fight. Right. And then he spent the last 30 seconds to a minute on top and mount. He wailed on him a little, but we could talk about it a little bit later. But that 3-piece of the soda from Jorge Masvidal looked like it did actually more damage to him. Bare knuckle outside the cage. But in the cage, in the mount, he was hitting him up. Gunnar was hitting up Leon, but he didn't make a huge move for submission. But for me, it looked like Leon lost the will to fight. Right. He just wrapped around and using no efficiency, he just held on for his dear life, hoping that his biceps don't burst. And at the post-fight,
could be seen as smart.
It's one
within
tactic.
The current real set.
It's one tactic, but there's no guarantee on how the judges decide. And in fact, differently than me, one of the judges gave 2 rounds to Gunnar, which is even different than what I would have said. I would have said draw 10-8 round for the last round, and I would have given it 10-8 to Gunnar because he ended in mount. And there was no attempt at escape. He didn't go for half guard. He didn't oompa. He didn't bridge. He didn't do anything. He didn't even punch from the bottom, as we've seen some people do. He didn't Ezekiel from bottom, as we've seen Alexei Olenek do, one of my favorite fighters. He didn't do anything but just hold. He hodored from there. He hodled from there. Like, what was he doing? So for me,
I can't believe you pulled a Game of Thrones and a Bitcoin reference back to back. Beautiful.
Those are for the deep fans. So like, I'm sorry it's long-winded, but that's my point. Is they should be abolished. But given the current state, honestly, I would have given this fight a draw.
Wow. You know, I don't know if I could say a draw. I could see your point about Gunnar, if had more time, could have got the finish. Because Leon did win, in my opinion, the first 3 or 4 minutes of that final round as well. So within the current rule set, I can't say that Gunnar took that round.
Would you give all 3 rounds to him, or would it have been 10-9
Yeah, I think
Gunnar?
for me it would have been decision unanimously, all 3 rounds.
10-9 all or 10-8?
10-9 all of them. And for me, you hit the nail on the head right there when you said deep fans. And I know you were talking about our references that you were talking about.
Hodling and Hodoring.
Yeah. Because I think for us, it would be more interesting to watch like a 15-minute round or or an unlimited time round.
No time limit, baby.
Right. It would be interesting to us.
No rounds either.
But we have to remember that mixed martial arts and the UFC only exist because of the business model. Like, people aren't going to put this out there for free. Like, it's not going to be, like, maybe you can backyard boxing, like Jorge Masvidal and Kimbo Slice, like, you know, someone's recording in somebody's house, but it exists currently because it has fans, because people watch it. And I don't know how many of those fans are non-casual, that are really, like, looking at how a fight breaks down, how the tactics work out, how people are game planning for a fight. They want to see violence, or they want to see fast-paced grappling. And for me, you're going to end up, some of those fights that are long and, you know, or unlimited time limit would end up exciting and fast-paced. But some of them are going to be a little like Usman Woodley, where it's one guy dominating and holding a guy down for 30, 40 minutes.
That was titillating.
For us titillating, but I'm not entirely sure.
I don't think we're alone. I think there's a huge number, and I think people like you and I, especially in this world that has increasing customization and individualization, would be willing to put up the money for a Lethway MMA.
I'm not arguing.
No rounds.
I'm not arguing that there's no other people other than us. I'm saying you might not. I think the fear in the UFC executive's mind and all the other promotions' mind is that they're not going to be able to pull off a Conor Khabib 2.5 million buys pay-per-view in that setting. And I think that's where the issues lie with the current rule set.
I disagree. I think the UFC took off in the beginning, the first 5, under the guidance of Rorion Gracie, who looked at fighting objectively and had as little rules as possible. It was vale tudo, which is Portuguese, right, for no holds barred. And, you know, people used to call it NHB as well, right? No holds barred.
Right.
And I think the less rules, the more creativity, and it was great. That's how the UFC originally sold. I believe that the concessions were made in name for entertainment purposes, like you're listing. But I think the real push behind them were all of the Puritans that were trying to make MMA illegal. And I think that they have lost. I think it's so deep in the culture now that we don't have to worry about legislators as much. And so I think now we can go back to the rules of at least the first 5 UFCs.
But see, this is what I always talk about, like when I'm trying to like think about if I regret a decision, you know, and I'm thinking about like, if I had done something differently, this might have ended up better. But you know, the UFC got to how big it was because of the decisions made, because of the changes made. It's possible that maybe it would have got as big under Horion's guidance alone.
The whole way.
That's not entirely, you know, we're not 100% on that.
We don't know.
But it got to where it is as the biggest promotion. It got to ESPN through the changes it went through. I mean, it got here. So going back and saying, oh, it would have been the same the other way is kind of like guesswork. You know, we don't know.
It's guesswork both ways.
Sure.
Because what got us to the dance doesn't mean it's always going to get us here, because things evolve.
Right.
And at the same time, what got us through the initial part isn't necessarily better than what we adapted.
Right.
So I think both are guesswork.
No, for sure. I agree. And I think that there was a lot of things from last night's card that, you know, under a setting that we had...
UFC London 2019.
Huh?
UFC London 2019.
Yeah, we would have enjoyed if it was under those circumstances of unlimited rounds and not having to worry about judges' decisions or referee decisions or, you know, some of these things. And there were many examples of that last night.
Go to that exact fight.
Which exactly?
Leon Edwards
right.
versus Gunnar Nelson in our ideal MMA style.
Right.
Do you think it plays out any differently?
See, you could say that Gunnar would have won the fight because he finishes him in that 3rd round setting where he mounts him. But I keep going back to this point. If Leon knows the rule set initially, knows what he has to do, he changes his whole game plan. So we can't say that that's going to be end up exactly the same way.
I agree.
But if it was, and they ended up in that position, if you're asking me what would have happened, I think Gunnar finishes him. But that's back to guesswork.
It's funny you say this, and I know you like it when I throw these random references to you, so let me throw another one at you.
I love it. Please hit me.
The argument you just made reminds me exactly about some of the political debates about who won the popular vote and who won the electoral college vote in the last presidential election in the United States, and about how their strategies would have adjusted had, for example, the popular vote been the means by which you would elect the president as opposed to the electoral college.
Right.
So it's interesting. You're saying basically the same thing I was saying, that the rules and incentives are the things that have the most importance and value, more so than, you know, any individual that you would place in the system. And I think that's right. Like, individuals and systems are important, but systems are more important.
I'd probably give you equally important. I think that if I was in there against Gunnar Nelson, it would be a different story. You know, I don't know how much preparation I would need for that. You know,
for real.
But yeah, no, it's not just that though. It's like even some of those decisions like that went crazy last night. That I was like, oh, I don't know about this, and we got to think about if 3 judges is the correct way to go. And I know that Joe Rogan always suggests.
Look who brought him up this time, ladies and gentlemen.
He always suggests the 10 judges or getting more judges just so that you get kind of...
Which I think is crazy, by the way, because an even number is dumb. So I was a judge in high school debate. I did college debate. And, you know, I have a background in the law as well. And the thing is, odd numbers work best for judges.
No, of course. Okay,
so arbitration panels. Yeah. So it's 3 right now. 5, 7, 9. Right. Those are all good numbers. Even 11 if you want to go, but 10 even numbers don't work for judges. My professional opinion, y'all want to pay me for consulting? Hook it up.
But think about it though. Like, the odds of getting a 5-5 scorecard are lower than getting like another, because there's so many people would have to be in agreement.
I don't even want to put it on the table.
Right, but I'm just saying the chance would be lower. But I see your point.
Agreed.
I see your point.
But think about if you have the odd number to get a draw, everyone has to agree.
I know. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Can you imagine 7 or 9 people agreeing that it was a draw?
Right.
Like, they're experts. No, but like ex-fighters of MMA.
But that goes back to you saying you go back to you saying that every decision is a draw.
I agree.
So like, forget that. Throw that out the window. You know.
What would GSP's record look like?
Man, GSP would have a lot of draws.
Incentives.
His last 7 fights other than
incentives.
That's back to that argument again.
So going back to decisions that we potentially disagree with.
Yeah, man, I wanted to go into that, and I love the kid too. I love Dominic Reyes. I think he's like a great prospect, but he lost that fight.
That's the light heavyweight fight. Who did he fight?
Volkan. No time Ozdemir, and I thought Volkan was better all around. I thought, you know, maybe Dominic got around the edges a little bit and got, you know, from a distance. Fought a decent fight, had probably almost the same amount of striking statistics as Volkan did, but I think Volkan did the more damage. I think Volkan was pressing more. I mean, I just couldn't see it being a split decision for Dominic.
So they boxed each other, and I'd say Ozdemir wins in the boxing. They started kicking, and Reyes wins from a distance, gets a knockdown with it, but Ozdemir knocks him down with a kick too.
Was that a knockdown?
Yeah, with a kick.
Really?
It was like a kick trip. It was a leg kick that took him to... But they did it too. Then Ozdemir answered back with his own.
Right.
But then on top of that, Ozdemir had more takedowns.
Right, and that's the thing about Volkan. He really surprised me because I think like he really took that loss to Anthony Smith to heart, where he was like, "Man, I'm not as well-rounded as I could be."
He's been in a rut. He's been in a rut.
I think
DC defended against him.
Right, and
Anthony beat him. Did anyone else beat him that we know?
Not that I remember, but he's been on a down streak, and I think he went down to Hard Knocks, or he stopped going down to Hard Knocks and trained in Europe or something. Yeah. He changed something up and focused on all assets rather than just trying to knock someone out in the first round, no time.
Quick side note, I thought he was like a deep vet because I know homeboy Dominic Reyes is an IT guy who's kind of newer.
Yeah.
I looked up, their ages are like the same. And they're both super young.
And I think Volkan only has like 5 more fights than
but he's been top 10 for a while, and Dominic just...
That's the thing with Volkan. He came in versus a ranked guy for his first UFC fight. He came in with so much hype. I might be OSB, yeah. He came in like undefeated from the European circuit, and he was a hot prospect, so they threw him into the fire right away. And credit to him, he stayed in that ranking for all
UFC, MMA, or any Dutch boxing type situation?
No, I don't. I think he was a kickboxer, but don't quote me on that. I'm not entirely sure.
But
Dominic had to earn his way into the top 10, whereas Volkan has been a top 10 fighter this whole time.
I didn't fully answer you, so let me answer you in short.
Yeah, who won that fight?
I don't know.
So you said a draw?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like decisions. Right. I said that. I want to abolish decisions.
I would have been more okay with a draw than a split decision win for Dominic. I would have been more okay with. I'd say at worst for Volkan, it was.
Was it even split or unanimous?
It was a split decision, Dominic.
Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't have been surprised either way, but if I had to be pinned down in the current system, I think I would have given it to Ozdemir, and I would have based it on the takedowns. The striking, maybe they looked at the sheer numbers.
They were equal. The numbers
I
were
didn't
close.
see.
The numbers were close.
But, like, not every strike is created equally, too.
That's what I'm saying. Volkan hit him with the bigger one.
It's difficult.
And the thing is, I think Volkan hurt his nose at some point because Dominic was labored towards the second, round or whatever. He was like,
the commentators were saying how he was breathing out of his mouth.
And they mentioned something about him going to Elevation Fight Team in Colorado. I think isn't that what Curtis Blades is or all those people?
And Overeem, who's also working with Wim Hof like Diego Sanchez is.
Oh yeah, he went to a big camp and a place that's known for high elevation, like really getting your stamina up. And his stamina was not good. I don't know if it's because he got hurt, but
you know what? There's something I learned a long time ago, and you can argue maybe his sparring rounds would be contrary to this, but I've done running, and then I've done things like football and rugby. And one of the things I learned about football and rugby versus running is there's one form of endurance where you just move. Excuse me. And there's another form of endurance when there's a man hitting you.
Right.
And banging with you.
Right, no.
So that might be, the veteran Ozdemir, like that might be part of his strategy. Even when I play recreational basketball, you see me play, people who think they have stamina, they lose their stamina around me because I'm very physical. A lot of people just want to have a shooting contest, but it's a contact sport. So I like to bring it to you. And this was a match where both of them were bringing it to each other. Mm-hmm. No one was particularly running from the other. Dominic ran away a little bit more.
It could have been a fist
Ozdemir.
that messed up his passageway in his nose.
Very possible. It could have been some of the body shots too. He mixed it up. Back and forth, man.
Right. No, I agree.
It goes to another point. Even if you have to do decisions, like, is it a time issue that we do these 3-rounders? Can everything be fine?
No, because it's
at least on the main card. Can we get 5 rounders on?
You know how long? For years, people have been complaining about the length of the UFC cards, and actually the pacing.
They're quick now.
The pacing of ESPN is much faster than Fox.
My God,
Fox was like we had to stay up till like 1 a.m. to finish.
Bro, this went from like 1 to 3:50.
It was done.
I was already late on my way home. I had to catch up on the other fights.
Right.
I came in right during the Dominic Ozdemir fight.
Oh wow, that's a good
beginning of it.
Yeah, you missed a great one with Nathaniel Wood, but.
Talk to me about it.
But I'm saying no. But going back to the issue of the timing is like you can't have every fight be 5 rounds because like you would be up till it'd be 2 days. It'd be a 2-day event every.
Like I said, man, I'm deep in it.
Yeah, I know you would like that, but some people would not, especially the people buying.
So talk to me about the fight that I missed.
Nathaniel Wood, I really was impressed by him. I knew of him peripherally as a prospect. Like I knew that he was coming up. I wasn't like entirely first on him. I know that he's good kind of everywhere. I knew that his boxing was really good. He's got like 9 KOs. And he fought a guy that I was actually interested in, a Mexican fighter who was supposed to fight Sean O'Malley.
Oh.
Yeah. And
so
that was right before Sean popped. And then obviously that sucks for that dude.
Yeah.
Because like.
For caffeine pills?
Right. We don't know what the diuretic. I think it's because that's something that helps him cut weight because Sean is tall as fuck for 135.
Or like GSP said on the JRE, it might be something that helps with reaction time or endurance. It's not all necessarily this understanding that everyone's on TRT and the good super deep voices and they get jacked.
No, he definitely doesn't look like he's on TRT. He's a skinny guy. But I think that I was looking forward to that fight because like that guy,
are they ranked or unranked?
Nathaniel's gonna be ranked.
Okay.
That's for sure. Okay. I don't know if Jose was ranked, but I was looking forward to the Sean fight with him because that's a scrap where both of them are gonna go at it. So I was like kind of interested with this fight already because I knew the opponent of Nathaniel Wood and I knew that he was touted as a prospect and he really looked good. His grappling looked good. He got the finish with rear naked choke, and it was like I expected him to just be a striker, and he had well-rounded, and he's a little small, not small, but like the 5'6". 5'7", right? So he's not like a monster for the division.
For 135, yeah. Especially when you have guys like Sugar Sean who are 5'11".
Yeah. So but he could definitely go far. I'm interested to see a bunch of fights with him. They could even give him a guy who's on a skid right now, but who could turn around and fight with Cody. Garbrandt would be interesting with him.
Man, after 2 knockouts, he needs a little pick-me-up, a little boxing style.
Would be a tough fight for him,
Fluff opponent.
Yeah, although we also love Peter Yan against Cody Garbrandt. Don't get me started with no mercy. That might happen too. Woo!
I like that.
I'd have palpitations from that one.
I like it, man.
But let's see, what else in that card?
The main event. Let's talk about the main event. Can I start or you got something?
Well,
Jorge Masvidal
please,
versus
no,
Darren
you know what?
Till.
Let's hear. I want to hear what you think about that.
Okay, first of all, we were playing Mortal
By the way,
Kombat.
when it was announced, I was so hyped because I fucking love Masvidal, and I was like, "This is a low-key great fight."
I was low-key disappointed because I wanted to see that Masvidal Nate that they were talking about. I wanted to see Nate versus Dustin. I wanted to see Nate against a lot of people. A lot of Nate fights are going away. I don't know what's happening. But I wanted to say we were playing Mortal Kombat just the other day. So this was fresh in my mind. I used Liu Kang as a character. And what do I see? Right when the bell rings, Jorge Masvidal does the Liu Kang flying kick. And I thought he was going to KO him with something quick.
He was going for
but
the
he
nuts.
went for the gonad.
You think he was going for the nuts? Or was it
I think that
was it tactical?
It is unfair to have an automatic assumption that he was going for the nuts.
I agree.
However, with the post-fight tactics and the either white lie or bold-faced lie, depending on what perspective you're coming from, he told, or legal defense, if you're coming at it from a law perspective,
I have so many opinions
about his
about that.
interaction with
I have
Leon
so many
Edwards,
opinions
which we're
about
talking
the
about.
post. Yeah, but
I don't think anyone except Jorge knows for sure, but I do think overall he wants to have respect. I told you when we were leading up to this fight in our previous episode that I saw Dan Hardy sit both of them down at a table. And he's no master mediator, but he fought in their division. He was a welterweight.
that's true.
And so he's not like some superimposing super heavyweight or something like that.
By the way,
he's equal to them.
I agree. Hold your point. But Dan Hardy is smaller than Paul Felder. How fucking big is Paul Felder?
I think Paul Felder's head is that big.
Really? When they stand next to each other, I'm like, Paul Felder's bigger than Dan Hardy.
Dan's taller.
No.
I don't know if he's wearing different shoes, but from my angle, when I saw him,
we're gonna have to research this one. But continue your point.
My point
about sitting at the table
is that he sat them at a table before the fight, and it was all respect. It was respectful disagreement because they had a dispute about who's better, and that was resolved in the cage via Jorge Masvidal KOing him.
Listen, people don't talk shit about Jorge Masvidal. Like people don't.
Well, people definitely do.
I mean,
he said he has a lot of demons he's dealing with in the post fight with Brett Okamoto on ESPN.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that like they know he's down to fight, and he's not messing.
He's been down since Kimbo days, man.
Right.
Bare knuckle Braun.
Dude, Jorge Masvidal. Okay. What did you think about the actual fight, though?
So the actual fight, this is how I see it. The way I see it is Darren Till is bigger. Darren Till is being assertive and aggressive and headhunting a little bit. Honestly, I don't know if he had anything that you would call a tactical misstep. At the end of the in-cage post-fight interview, Jorge mentions their age. Jorge's 34. He's an absolute veteran. Till is 24. He's a veteran in his own right. Mm-hmm. He's got a pretty deep record. He's not like 4-0 like Crone was getting into the UFC. So he's got some fights underneath him. But you know what? At these higher levels, you're going to get tested. So what I saw was there were a lot of switch-ups. I saw Masvidal threaten the takedowns a little bit. So maybe a Muay Thai fight, Till takes it with that pressure and power. But in MMA, Masvidal switching it up with the threat of a takedown, and he has submitted people in the past. He has taken people down. Darren did just lose by submission when he was on the ground. So maybe it's a legitimate enough fear that allowed him to get his right cross, which was a feint, and Darren bit on it, hit him with one hook. That, in my opinion, knocked him out.
Yeah, he was
As he was falling, he got a second hook. And then when he hit the ground, he got a third hook before the ref pulled him back.
I think it was a hammer, but yeah, I agree.
I mean, it was all the left hand. Right. It was 3 left hands.
Yeah, exactly. Of different kind.
A 3-piece without the soda, like he gave to Leon, and we'll get to that too. But I want to say a point that I tweeted. This is interesting. Okay. We have 2 Anglo fighters who lost to 2 Hispanic fighters who delved deep into nature. Diego Sanchez and Jorge Masvidal. Okay. Both of these people are the older veterans and the other one's up and coming. And a lot of people make the argument that these veterans are being fed to create new rising stars. Yeah. I think you can't feed people in an authentic sport like MMA because at the end of the day, the veterans got fed. So Diego Sanchez into a lot of different things about nature that we've talked about and other people have talked about elsewhere. Jorge spent his time in this Survivor-like series deeply getting to know himself.
With Yoel.
I think Yoel's after.
Oh,
but
yeah, I don't know.
yeah, I think Yoel got after him. I think he recommended Yoel. So Jorge got no phone, no internet, no distractions. He talked about a lot of things people were talking about, cutting people out of his life that he thought were negative. He didn't want to mention the specifics, but in the post-fight with Brett Okamoto, outside the cage, he said that he had a lot of personal demons he's been dealing with, but overall he's in a better situation in his life. So for me, the fact that both of these men who are veterans delved deep into nature, delved deep into themselves, it seems like they got kind of a new lease on their MMA careers.
He needed it because he was coming off a couple losses and a long break. He was like a year out from the sport, and when he was last in the sport, he had a couple losses.
Yeah, to Wonder Boy and to...
Tough guys. It wasn't like easy fights.
Top level.
And this is a hard fight for Jorge. Jorge has more fights at lightweight than he has at welterweight.
That makes a weight cutting decision and debate,
maybe, but
right?
Jorge lost Masvidal.
That's interesting.
Has a loss.
I didn't know that. That's the same thing with Diego.
Yeah.
They were both at 55, right?
Yeah, but Jorge has a loss to Al.
Ali Quinta at 55.
At 55.
Ali Quinta ain't no joke.
Right, but maybe he was cutting too much for the 155 division, and he probably shouldn't have been cutting.
And Al's no joke.
And Masvidal has a win over Cerrone at 55. There's a bunch of fights that he had at 55, and I think that this was a fight that I was scared that Darren was going to hurt him bad, and I think that's what Darren needed to do. Like
KO first round type situation.
You said that in a Muay Thai fight Darren could win.
Maybe I said.
I don't
know.
I think Jorge Masvidal has some of the.
Maybe he has a better chance. Is what I'm trying to say.
I think Masvidal has way more tools than Darren does
in pure striking.
Striking,
interesting,
everywhere. Way more tools, but Darren has that explosive KO power early.
Yeah.
And it almost worked. He put him down in the first 30 seconds. And
so,
it was like...
I don't know if he said wow in Spanish or if he said wow, but you can see if you go back at the footage that when Darren Till does that first knockdown, like after the Liu Kang kick breakup by the ref, they get back. And the first thing is Till knocks him down. Jorge falls down and audibly says wow or wow.
Yeah, he felt it. He was like,
really.
I don't think Jorge had been hit in a cage that hard before. Like, he was just like, oh man, this is a big dude.
He said in the post-fight interview, I felt in that moment I wanted to kill him, and he said if he lets me get back up, I'm gonna get him.
And that's because he's a killer. Like, Jorge's crazy, bro. But what I'm saying is, I was nervous, and I thought that was how it was going to go. I thought Darren was going to finish him that way, and that's how he needed to do it.
On the ground or on the feet?
He needed to just get one hit, put him down, hammer fist, finish, get out of there early. Because if he let it be a long fight, slowly Masvidal was going to pick him apart.
What'd you think of that get-up? What'd you think of his guard and how he got back up?
I think it's just that the Till is not that experienced with finishing a guy on the ground. He probably could have if he would have had more skills down there. I don't want to hate too much on Till. I think he's great. I think he's a fantastic fighter. Maybe too much too early with Woodley and Masvidal. I think they were trying to give him Masvidal fight because no one else would come and it would be a fight to get him back on a winning track. I thought that was a terrible choice to Max. If they wanted that, if the UFC's goal was to get Till back on the right track, put him back in the title contention immediately, give him a guy like Masvidal who was going to be hungry coming back off of losses, like it's a tough fight. And it worked, man. I think, and you can't even say honestly that Masvidal pieced him up and like slowly picked him apart. I thought it could have gone either way. It was a 50-50 situation, and he got lucky and the hook landed. He
bit on the feint first.
He bit on the feint, and the hook
hard
landed.
on the feint. He put two hands up to block the right hand.
Yeah. And
then the left caught him here once, twice, third time on the ground.
And props to Jorge because he doesn't throw hooks that much. He didn't throw a hook in that fight really, and he's not known for power hooks. He's known for the jabs, just the cross. Keeping it simple, lots of leg kicks. He doesn't throw a lot of power.
He says that's the first time he ever threw it. So they were both southpaw. The commentators were saying earlier in the night that there were about 4 or 5 matches that were orthodox versus southpaw. This match was southpaw versus southpaw. And Jorge said he had never thrown a left hook from southpaw before against a southpaw.
Yeah. And you know what? Maybe Darren Till knew that. Maybe Darren Till knows that it wasn't coming, and he's like, that's not a punch that's going to be thrown. And it completely took him by surprise, and it was like, it could have been lucky, but still.
It's a little bit of pretense of knowledge, a little bit of arrogance in a situation of uncertainty.
Yeah. And
to quote Hayek and Nassim, since we mentioned him earlier.
I think we're gonna just try to build up as many references as we can.
100%. We got to give people bibliographies.
Absolutely, we're well versed here.
Little Easter eggs.
I think that Masvidal probably earned himself into contention with this
So I was just gonna ask you that. Who do you want next for Till? Who do you want next for Masvidal?
It's so tough, especially because Masvidal basically set in stone what his next fight is going to be with that post-fight antics with Leon Edwards. I mean,
yeah,
like
Askren accused him of doing that on purpose to avoid fighting him.
Listen, Askren's going to say whatever he wants. Askren will use any opportunity to get a jibe in. I don't think he actually believes that. I don't know, because Jorge's the type of guy where if you see him on the street, if you said the same shit, if you tried to call him out on the street, that's exactly what would happen to you. He's like, he forgets, I think, that he's in a work setting. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's ready to go whenever, wherever, let's go. Like, I'm down.
I don't know if he forgets or he doesn't give a fuck.
It's one of the two.
One of the F's.
Because I think Leon is like, you know, the whole it's business style of like trying to promote a fight, trying to be like, hey, call out somebody and be like, let's go, it's business. He's not actually looking to fight in that scenario.
I saw some commentators say basically to that effect that his personality in real life doesn't match the persona he was trying to display. So he's more reserved, more quiet, more shy.
He's trying to promote a fight.
Soft-spoken, but he might not even like promoting fights that way. Mm-hmm. But he might think in this post-Conor McGregor era, this is the only way. In this Colby Covington era, even though he didn't get his last situation.
Please don't give Colby an era. I don't think he quite deserves his own era yet.
Well, he got all those fights that he got, and he did get his interim belt at his time that he did take to President Donald Trump.
It irks me to have a Colby Covington era.
Hey, man, you need a heel.
It's true. It's total pro wrestling stuff now. UFC is total pro wrestling stuff.
Yeah, I grew up on WWE.
Yeah. But, you know, I think that the Leon Edwards fight is, you practically have to make it after that shenanigan. Although I would have preferred a lot of other fights for Jorge. I mean, I know Usman's manager Ali was trying to make that Masvidal fight happen already. I just don't think that's the right fight to do. I think so many other people, like you said, Colby probably deserves that fight, or give Ben Askren or somebody that fight. But I think Masvidal versus Santiago would have been a great fight.
Ponzinibbio.
Yeah, because Dos Anjos doesn't want to fight Ponzinibbio.
You mean would it have been prior to this, or
no?
Going forward?
No, that'd be an interesting fight.
So you wouldn't give Leon him?
Oh,
Leon versus Ponzinibbio?
That could be fun too, but I think Leon really deserved. I know actually. You know what? Now that I think about it, Santiago's like top 5 already in the welterweight, so that's already.
Is he? Yeah. I thought it was.
Yeah, so that would actually be a good. Either person fighting Santiago makes sense. You know, like Leon fighting him or Jorge fighting him. You could do that, or you could do Jorge Masvidal versus Robbie Lawler. That'd be a fucking scrap.
Absolute scrap. But it would be no title picture.
No, it'd be a nothing fight. Neither one of them gain anything. You know, it's two veterans going at it. Neither one of them. It's just
they get higher in the top 10.
Yeah, that's true.
They're beating a ranked opponent, which is always good.
Another good fight. I mean, if he doesn't want Ponzinibbio, there was another big monster at 170. Is a smaller guy who's also fought at lightweight. That's Dos Anjos. I think Dos Anjos and Masvidal would be a good fight. Would be interesting. A lot of interesting high level shit. Really high level all around.
Tyron Woodley needs to earn his keep in Dana White's eyes. So Tyron Woodley, Jorge Masvidal would be interesting.
Would be great, but I think that's an easy fight for Tyron. That'd be like a little bit of he's gonna Usman.
You sound like you're underrating the man. You say people underrated.
Listen, Darren Till's wrestling versus Woodley's wrestling is a completely different thing. But in terms of Darren Till, I think I talked to you about this prior, and I think he's done at 170. I think he's too big of a star. I don't know if you noticed the reaction the fans had when he came out. He was like one of the biggest things that's ever been in the London card in the UFC, and I think it's too early to bring him down and put him he's gonna have to fight somebody barely in the rankings now, coming off 2 losses. He can't even get a huge fight going. He's gonna be on the main card, maybe not a headliner. You could probably still get him to headline an event if you move him up to 185. Give him one of the big names at 185. And see if he can make it in that division. I think that would be fun. I think that would be a crowd pleaser. And I think he could do it. He's pretty big.
I would love that. I'm going to do you one better on your principle. And I bet he was walking around at 200 plus. I'd like to see him fight at light heavyweight.
I know you would.
Against Ilir Latifi.
Because as we say here, Open weight is the only way.
Is the only way. Ilir Latifi versus Darren Till. What do you think about that fight?
That's a bad fight for Darren Till.
Why?
Because Darren Till will just get taken down and will go for many rides. He's going to go for a lot of rides. He might as well pay for a ticket.
All the roller coasters.
Exactly. He's going to throw him around.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. I think that would not be fun for him. But if he gets like a striker, like, I don't even know like what a high level,
Johnny Walker versus Darren Till.
At 205?
Or Dominic Reyes versus Darren Till.
No, but these guys, then Till looks small.
I don't think they're that different if you let him bulk. I think he looks emaciated because he's cutting.
The reach, though. Darren's got like...
You're right. The reach would be lower. Yeah, he'd be the smaller guy. For sure.
He'd be way smaller.
I don't think... Because he'd be bulkier. It'd be different. It's a different build.
I think...
Shorter, stockier.
With everyone cutting the way they do, I think he would still be successful at middleweight. Whereas light heavyweight would be a stretch.
How about one of the two middleweights who say they're going to move to light heavyweight? So, for example, Chris Weidman or Luke Rockhold versus him at light heavy.
I'd be more interested in the Rockhold fight. I think
at light heavy.
At light heavy, I'd be more interested in the Rockhold fight because I think Weidman would be a little tough for Darren Till. That's not to say Weidman is better than Rockhold by any means. We still haven't seen that.
But stylistically.
But stylistically, I don't like Weidman.
You think his wrestling and his BJJ would overwhelm?
Yeah, I just think it would.
Whereas Rockhold might want to trade with him.
Yeah, Rockhold has a tendency to not use wrestling, even though he's good at it.
Yeah, he's just defensively, like Robert Whittaker.
He could be.
He was a brown belt in jiu-jitsu and wrestling champion in Australia, but mostly uses just escape, kickbox you, escape, kickbox you.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I think so for sure. And then I think
that covers the card, unless you want to talk briefly about the fiasco outside of the arena. We kind of discussed that a little bit by touching.
I think that Leon was trying to promote the fight, like possibly get a cool Masvidal fight, because he said he wanted the winner of Masvidal Till. And I'm sure he wanted Till in his eyes, but he's not going to get it. And then Masvidal just didn't take kindly to it. It was one of those situations where he was being real. And Leon was just like, I wasn't ready for this to be a real thing, but okay. And I don't think there should be any repercussions. Like,
he's not pressing charges. He's
not. No, but I'm saying from the UFC, there shouldn't be any stripping from the commissions or money or anything like that. Like, Masvidal needs to put his kid in college and don't take any more of his money.
That was hilarious. Yeah, he was thirsty for that.
That fight that night, he kept saying it. I'm like, come on, man. He's like the main event of the card.
He told everybody. He went up to the judges, to the refs.
He's like, you thought it was fight of the night?
My God.
Yeah.
Hey, man, he was shooting his shot for real.
Yeah.
I think that's good for MMA. Are there any other combat sports like grappling or striking that you wanted to get into?
If you wanted to keep talking about like decisions and stuff and how are they draws or are they actual finishes to a fight, I want to ask you this question about Errol Spence versus Mickey Garcia. That was the big
boxing,
welterweight title that was on the line.
Yeah, and their weights are a little different in boxing than UFC.
Right, it's not welterweight and 170. It's much lower actually. And that finished in decision for Spence beating Mickey. And Mickey was coming up 2 weight classes. He wasn't coming up 1. He wasn't going from lightweight to super lightweight. He was going from lightweight to welterweight, which is 2 jumps.
Yeah.
And Errol Spence is a much taller guy, much bigger guy. And I thought, to be honest, that Mickey was the more technical boxer. And I thought that he might be able to get, like just on the inside and just avoid the long reach of Errol Spence and just like work the body, get really in there. And then the Errol showed real skill on the stuff I watched, and he really, really looked good and looked far better than I expected him. And maybe I haven't seen enough of Errol's fights. Like, I knew his record was phenomenal, but he looked really good and looked dominant, and maybe it is because of the size. Maybe it wasn't, but I don't know.
So I think repetition is great as a form of emphasis. So if you feel like I'm repeating, that's because I'm repeating. Open weight is the only weight.
Yeah.
So Conor McGregor looked phenomenal at 145 pounds. Mm-hmm. He did well against one opponent at 155, and then he's had a shaky record since he went up to 170, and now he's talking crazy about 185.
Yeah.
I think that the higher weight class you go in, the more excellency or excellence is exposed. whether or not someone is technical, in my opinion, is exposed by the higher and higher weight classes you see them in. Conor McGregor, if he had continued the rest of his career at 145, might have been one of the greatest 145ers of all time. One blessed Max Holloway might have something else to say about that.
Yeah.
Jose Aldo might have something to say about it. Zabit and Crone coming up, and Brian Ortega
I
might have
love that
something
you
to say
throw a
about it.
5-0 fighter in that mix.
They might have something to say about it. They might have something to say about it, especially with the Nate Diaz cornering him and that whole issue.
Okay.
They might have something to say about that. But what I saw from that is that the higher weight class he got, the more we saw that, oh, maybe it wasn't he was so excellent, but that he was well matched up for this particular group of people who wouldn't do as well in higher ones.
Mm-hmm.
Another example I give you recently from Bellator is Rory McDonald versus Musasi.
Mm-hmm.
Rory McDonald is coached by my favorite coach in the game, right? That TriStar, that Dana-Hare lineage for Sahabi. He's trained also by George St. Pierre, an arguable greatest of all time. But Musasi outclassed him.
But here's
and
the
you
thing.
can't say it wasn't technical.
No, but here's
so
the thing.
For your boxing question here,
Mm-hmm.
I think Mickey was exposed.
But listen, okay. Here's my thinking here. I actually think the Rory Musasi fight was an outlier. Because if you've noticed something, the lighter weights that have come up to the heavier weight in those super fights that have been going around these days have won the fight more often than not. Cejudo. Oh no, Dillashaw came down.
Yeah, that's the other way.
The smaller guy.
That's the other way.
DC beating Stipe. But it's still a smaller guy winning, is what I'm saying. So DC beating Stipe.
DC's not smaller than him. He weighs more than him.
Okay, but a 205er coming up to...
But you can't say 205 is disingenuous.
It's not, because a 6'4 guy Stipe is bigger than a 5'11
Taller.
DC. Okay, but reach,
Taller.
everything.
Who's bigger, Darren Wynn or Luke Rockhold?
Luke Rockhold.
Okay, I would say Darren Wynn because he weighs more.
No, Luke Rockhold is going to be the bigger guy than Darren Wynn.
Darren Wynn is almost
together.
a foot shorter.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But he weighs more. DC, you're right, is significantly shorter than Stipe.
And the
I
reach.
have to check the reach shorter.
The leg
But
reach,
he outweighs Stipe by about 10 to 15 pounds.
It's not, that's okay. He's coming from a guy, Stipe could not make 205. That's the bottom line.
I don't know
where
that.
DC can.
I don't know that.
But what I'm saying
shocked DC does.
Right. Well, that's because he's starting. It's a whole different thing. But I just think that the Rory fight, if everything went by the playbook, he would have won that fight because theoretically he would be cutting less. That's the whole argument of cutting less means you're going to perform better.
Yeah.
But it could just be that Musasi was just it's just an amazing fighter and probably one of the best middleweights in the world. That's a different thing. But I wanted to ask you this thing. I don't know, before we go back to the boxing, because it kind of ties into this, because you made some, I find to be outlandish statements, but I
live in that outlandish.
I love that you do. I appreciate that. So do you think, for example, that Stipe Miocic, just throwing him out there because he's the so-called heavyweight GOAT, is a more skilled fighter, technically, than TJ Dillashaw?
100%.
Oh, man.
100%.
That, for me, is a big no. Put me on a record for NO.
100%. I've told you this before. When we used to play the Champions of North and Champions of North Return to Arms, we'd have these big boss battles. And a lot of Dungeons and Dragons type or fantasy type games have this. And bigger foes, right? There's the American saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. You can find ways to dance around them. I am guessing that Stipe is more technical because we don't have an absolute division right now. What I am saying to you is I would like to see an absolute match. Open weight. TJ Dillashaw has said that he walks around at 165. So right now he fought at 125. To me, the fact that he cut to 125 means nothing. He weighs in the ring anywhere between anywhere between 150 and 165.
When he's fighting bantamweight,
when he's
flyweight.
No, both. No. That's the crazy thing. Listen to his podcast.
That much.
I listened to his podcast. He has a very scientific crew with, I always butcher the guy's name, Sam Calavita and The Garage, with Aaron Pico and with Cub Swanson and all the boys in Orange County. but he said he got back to the same weight as when he was bantam, and it's always between 150 and 165. Okay? And when he's not weight cutting at all, it's going to be closer to that 165. And maybe if he's bulking, maybe he's 170. Anyway, I don't know what his end weight is.
But why does that make you think Stipe is more technical?
Let me tell you why.
Just because of his size?
No. I'd say I don't know. I said my guess is Stipe, but I don't know. What I would like to see is an absolute division in the UFC. If not the whole thing be absolute, have an absolute division, and maybe
have it open to anybody?
Maybe just begin with open to champions. So Dillashaw was a champion, Stipe was a champion. Allow them in between their championship defenses to fight each other open weight. So my guess is TJ would be between 165 and 170, and he'd be the healthiest that he's ever been because he's only focusing on technique and strategy as opposed to weight. And then I would like to see what happens. My initial gut guess, and I could be totally wrong, and I'm willing to be disproved. I would love it if I was disproved, is Dillashaw versus Stipe. Stipe would win. If Dillashaw won
But that wasn't my question.
Holy shit.
My question is not
Holy
who would
shit.
win. But my question was
But
not
that's
who
what
would
I mean by technical.
Okay, but
For me, the one who's more technical is the one whose strategy wins. You said that to me earlier when we were discussing Leon Edwards versus Gunnar Nelson.
No, that's game plan. Game plan is different than technical. Game plan is idea based. Technical is your skills. Like when I told you Jorge Masvidal has more tools in his locker than Darren Till, that's what I mean by technical. He has more options, more things he can do inside of the cage.
I understand your
things
distinction.
well.
And let me tell you where the rubber meets the road in my disagreement. I'll give a basketball analogy since we like basketball, and Ariel Hawani's been dipping into basketball commentary. He actually missed UFC London for that reason.
I saw that.
Someone could be great at hitting 3-point shots in practice. But for me, like Iverson, I say, we talking about practice? I want to see, can they shoot a three with a man in their face, with the arena screaming? So for me,
a man of their own size.
No, for me that's an artificial stipulation. So for me, can TJ Dillashaw hit a more technical punch combo on the mitts than Stipe? Probably.
Yeah.
I don't know 100%.
Yeah.
As is pretty technical too, if you want to
as a
say
boxer,
that.
he is.
As
Yeah.
a boxer,
Not as a kickboxer.
on the mitts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
His wrestling and boxing are great. So transferring from mitts, how about a dummy? Okay. Maybe Dillashaw's still better. Okay, dummy, get rid of a dummy. How about a random citizen off the street? Okay, as we progress through the levels, we go through how can he do it against the best fighters on earth? And the only way to resolve that is with an absolute division. I don't know the answer. I would like to see it.
Can I give my opinion real quickly?
Holla at me. You already called it an abomination.
I think I did. And I keep that on record. I think Jose Aldo at 205 pounds is the greatest fighter in the history of the world.
Possible.
I think Jose Aldo...
You think that's how much he weighs?
It'll be two of them in there.
You think
It'll
that's
be
how much
two
he
Jose
weighs?
Aldos. No, Jose Aldo weighs like 160 pounds.
Do you think he
But
tops out at 160?
Yeah, something around 160, 170. I think Jose Aldo, bulked up at 5'7", 200 pounds, is the best fighter.
Maurice Jones-Drew build?
I think he's the best fighter in the entire world, if he wants to be. He'll be fat. He'll be tubby Aldo.
I love it, man.
He'll be shaking his
I like
belly
big country.
around.
I like the black beast.
No, man. But that's the thing, though. I don't think that you have to be... See, it's the whole, like, dealing with absolutes thing. Like, I know an absolute division is fun, and you could... If your choice is like that. But I think that you can have both. You can have divisions. I don't think divisions are a bad thing. I think that you can... If someone wants to go for it, sure. But I think, like... I would like to see guys of similar stature fighting each other. I don't think it's bad.
I don't... Let me rephrase. I do think divisions are inferior. I'm fine with them in the squo, or the status quo. But what I'm saying is, alongside the weight divisions, have an absolute.
Mm-hmm.
That's not mutually exclusive. You can have people fight people their size.
The ideology
that the cream of the crop is absolute.
Exclusive. The ideology is mutually exclusive.
Not the second
because
one.
you're believing in that the baddest person on the planet is the person that only wins that absolute division.
That's what people say about the heavyweight champion right now.
Right.
They call him the baddest man, and when they joke about DC, the daddest man.
I think Jose Aldo at 200 pounds destroys DC.
I'd like to see it.
I'm just saying.
I'd like to see it.
It's such a theoretical. Jose Aldo would never get up to 200 pounds. But I'm saying
I'd like to see
technicality wise.
Max Holloway has called out on camera DC.
I think Max beats DC too.
I'd like to see. I think Max gets up to 180.
I think Max gets
If
up
you
to
let him.
205. I'm saying forget 180. I think
Man, honestly, I think most people 170 and above are probably 200 pounders. So in my opinion, in like the first UFCs, they'd be 200 plus pounds.
Shocked if there's welterweights out there that don't walk around at 190 to 200. I'd be shocked.
Well, the two that we just named earlier who got into nature, Diego Sanchez and Jorge Masvidal, because they fought at lower.
I think Diego and Jorge probably walk around close to 190 as well. Because
you're saying close to 200, not quite.
No, but I'm saying
you're not saying past it.
A lot of them are at 200, like Darren's over 200, whereas
Mickey Gall.
Right. I think because like if you look at the 155ers, like Nate and Donald, when they were like teasing a fight, they're like, "Fuck it, let's do it at 185," because that's what they walk around at. You know what I mean? So my thinking is, if 55ers, a lot of them are walking at 185, then obviously 170s are going to be walking around 200. It's just a crazy game, the whole weight cutting game. But back to Errol Spence and Mickey Garcia, I think it was an enlightening fight, and it really showed to me that Errol Spence is like the real deal. And I think you have to see a Crawford fight now for the undisputed of that division. Terrence Crawford and him have to throw down at some point. There's a lot of like promotional fighting because like one is signed to one promotion, the other's to the other. It's hard to get those fights to happen. That's a common theme with a lot of stuff we're going to be talking about.
But we still have to respect that the boxing promotions do interpromotional
and
fights.
They unify. Yes. They allow it
which
to happen.
We haven't seen in MMA yet.
Right, I would love that. Oh
so
my god.
We
haven't talked about this yet,
boxing.
but having like a full on not just like a divisional tournament, not like a heavyweight tournament, like a UFC, Bellator, Ryzen
and One are talking about it right
now.
now.
No, but I'm saying put all of them in
brackets
my god. And have them all throw that would be the greatest.
You want a Royal Rumble, dog. That's what you want.
Not in the same ring at the same time. I'm saying brackets, have them all fight each other, and have all the champions fight each other. That'd be great. But what I'm saying...
I'm sure Bader wants that.
Oh, it would be...
Double champ versus double champ.
Oh, it would be fantastic. But... I think for Errol Spence, either it's got to be the Terrence Crawford fight. I know they're trying to book that Manny Pacquiao fight with him next, and Manny's old, and I think that's bad for Manny. Like, why would you do that?
If he wants it, give it to him, bro. Let's see it. It goes back to the debate that we are having: veteran versus up and comer.
Yeah.
Who's gonna get it? Yeah. And I think it's up in the air.
I think Errol.
I don't think you could write out Manny Pacquiao.
Put me down for Errol Spence in Vegas.
I
love Manny too. Manny's great. But then for Mickey Garcia, I think it was a win-win fight for him because if he wins, he starts achieving that like pound-for-pound best status because he jumped up 2 weight classes and grabbed the belt against a really tough guy. And then if he loses, it's like, oh, he jumped up 2 weight classes. You know, like there's a reason why he didn't get it. So it was like, you know, he was just going for an opportunity there. And I think there's still a lot of great fights for him down at lightweight. And I think he goes down. And if Lomachenko wins his next fight, I would love if they manage to come to an agreement and have Mickey Garcia versus Lomachenko. You know how much I love Lomachenko. I try to talk about Lomachenko as much as I can.
I like
the Matrix, man.
The man Thaddeus Russell put me onto him, and I wasn't always the biggest boxing fan because
we prefer grappling here.
I like less and less rules. Mm-hmm. Boxing is very restricted.
The most restrictive fighting sport.
You can't do a spinning back fist even.
Right. You can't do anything like that.
You can't even throw an elbow. The gloves are even bigger, which in my opinion are more unrealistic.
Although adding restrictions,
still nice.
Adding restrictions allows fighters to tone up on the specific skills, though. I have to say that. I know that it makes it less realistic to fight.
Yes.
But you do tone up those skills that exist. You know what I mean?
Agreed. If all you had to do is like look at the
cross, jab, hook, uppercut, you know, like
look at the dunk contest people.
Yeah.
Like all the different dunk contest specialists on YouTube now, like all they have to do is dunk. They get better than the people in the NBA.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
It's not in game.
There's that one dude, I'm forgetting his name right now, but he came out in jeans at the last dunk contest. That's crazy, man. You know what I'm saying? So I agree with you, but I agree with Faras's analysis that the more restrictive, the more rules there are, the more you're relying on genetics and just what someone's born with.
Right.
And the less creativity.
Creativity.
Less options, less technique overall.
Sure. I see your point there.
But hey, genetics is interesting too.
Of course. And then, other than Errol Spence and Manny Garcia, what else was happening? A lot was happening this week.
Tenshin. Did you want to talk about
that was last week.
But our Twitter background?
Oh man, yeah. By the way,
white belt at white belt MMAS
or Soma, we still don't know, but white belt MMAS, martial arts and sciences. We put Tenshin up there as our background photo. That latest cartwheel kick KO, man. That dude is so exciting.
The man who may or may have not had a fake or real exhibition with Floyd Mayweather.
That was a work. We know it was a work. That was a setup. We know Floyd made money off that. We know that. And he probably paid a little bit to Tenshin to make that happen. But
is it Josh Barnett's blood sport? Is it the WWE? Is it MMA?
Who knows? Who knows?
What is it?
But what you people need to do is watch all of Tenshin's KOs because that dude is so exciting. He finds crazy ways to finish fights and it's just amazing. And he had an event, I think it was last weekend. We talked about it on the last podcast, but we had some glitch. It went into the ether. We lost it forever. We briefly wanted to touch it. Tenshin had a fight with one promotion. I think it's called Rise. I think it was the Rise kickboxing promotion in Japan. And he won his fight. And then there was another kickboxing event, K1 event. And there was Takeru, who's like another guy in the same division as Tenshin. Another relatively young guy who's a killer, monster streak. Both of them are knockout artist guys. And I just see them as two people running up on opposite sides of the hill. And they're going to meet at the top eventually. If Japan can stop playing around and get the promotional thing right, because we talked about this with the boxing, about how we want these guys to fight each other, we just got to make it happen. So we will definitely be the first ones on top of the Takeru Tenshin fight if it ever happens, but hoping it will happen.
I'm gonna hit you with an obscure one. Just because I brought up Josh Barnett, I forgot about this, but I actually saw one of his grapplers, Victor Henry, at a local grappling tournament last year that I was grappling at. It was jiu-jitsu. He was the super fight.
Right.
And he actually...
I think he's an MMA fighter too.
He is. Yeah. So he lost that super fight that I actually saw in jiu-jitsu, but it was good. It was a good match. But recently, he just fought in an organization called Deep in MMA.
That's Japan, right?
Yeah. And he won by... It was a good kind of striking battle at first, but eventually he got him to the ground. And he got him to a choke that I was just working on this past Friday in jiu-jitsu class, and I didn't know the name of it. So I actually asked Josh Barnett, and he responded on Instagram saying that he calls it the head and arm compression.
I haven't heard that. Has that been called something else?
It probably has a more technical name. I'd have to look up the kind of judo books to see what the Japanese say about it.
It's an older move, huh?
Yeah, the Japanese uses it in judo, but you basically... It's like an arm triangle, except you're up in cross-side. So you have their arm, you have their head, and you're just choking them while putting your body weight on them. And he finished him that way.
Okay.
Dean Lister was finished by Josh Barnett.
Really?
In a grappling
by
tournament.
Move?
By that move a long time ago. So his disciple Victor Henry just finished a guy with that. And what's interesting about it is, we could talk about different groups like catch wrestling.
Can I just say that I
fighting,
love
everyone
a non-Japanese fighter fighting in Japanese promotions and he's not a big name? I love when guys.
Well, Barnett is a Japanophile, so it makes sense.
I love when guys go out there and say, "Fuck it, I'm gonna go to some crazy promotion in a different country."
Hey man, if Saitama ever calls my name,
you'll be
going to that super arena.
Hey, I know you'll fight in the sumo.
I'll fight sumo, bare knuckle boxing, bare left way, MMA. I'll fight thumb war. I'll do a thumb war, baby.
Anything.
I'll do anything. Arm wrestling. Come on, dog.
Yeah, but it was a lot of events though.
So just while we're on the subject of grappling, anything you want to say about Polaris 9?
Oh, dude, that was also this weekend. You're right. That was the one with Rafael Lovato and Jake Shields.
Two MMA fighters, as we said,
yes,
going out of their most recent comfort zones into
Shields,
grappling.
Jake Shields you can classify as a MMA fighter, more so as a grappler. I think Lovato, with this level of accomplishments in the grappling scene versus his 9-0 record in Bellator, I think you could classify him.
He was offered a title shot against Musasi, whom we were just talking about, and he had to pull out.
He's already decorated as an MMA fighter. What I'm saying is he's more decorated. Known as a jiu-jitsu guy.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But I would go back and say his decoration and even his principles and philosophy, like I've heard he forces Justin Wren, the heavyweight that works with the Pygmies, to still train in the gi, even though they're both MMA fighters. Whereas Jake Shields has been on that no gi tip with Dana Hair. and the Death Squad recently.
Yeah. You know, when I was watching Polaris, and I was really hyped for that fight, and that was actually, of all the fights that night, that was the one that disappointed the most.
Yeah, what can you do?
Like, it was a kind of like, I don't know if Jake didn't have an idea for how he wanted to finish Rafael. Like, he kind of would get into it a couple of nice positions. He was like on top for a couple moments where he got a takedown, and he was like sitting in Rafael's guard, and he just didn't know what to do. He was like sitting there being careful. I guess he was nervous of like Rafael's going to take one of his arms or take something in that situation. But it was a lot of stalling. There was moments where I even thought the ref could even bring them up. And I hate when the ref brings people up in jiu-jitsu. Or,
it's the worst.
It's like, but I'm like, this could use it because we're sitting there watching 5 minutes of Jake stalling, But, I think refs have a propensity of being afraid when it's big, high-level names to, like, make a move, to make that move. Because it's like, you didn't just make Rafael Lovato get up. Did you? Like, why did you do that? But, so I think it could have used that. It was not that interesting of a fight. I think Lovato won by decision, which I would agree with. Jake didn't really offer much.
So Lovato has a Jeet Kune Do background, actually. His father was Jeet Kune Do before they did BJJ. But Jake's is wrestling background.
Right.
Did you notice anything different in the stand-up grappling versus the ground grappling?
No, it was a lot of just like very normal jiu-jitsu stuff. It wasn't anything like using wrestling for double leg takedowns or something. Like, there wasn't a lot of that in there. There was a lot of neckties and stuff, but nothing, and pull downs. I forget terminologies, but
head and collar
choke, collar, and it just wasn't anything that was like specific to wrestling.
Okay.
But I thought Lovato won the fight, but it wasn't that interesting. There was a few interesting people on that card too. A couple people we talked about on the ADCC episode that we
Wagner Hocha, the man who TKO'd somebody in CJJ. I'll forever remember him that way.
Yes.
What did he do this time?
He won his fight against Ross Nichols, who I actually had as my dark horse for ADCC.
Yeah.
I loved his guard work. I love how he is on the bottom, but Wagner was just not having any of it. He was always going for passing, very aggressive, hitting Ross a couple times in the face, I think on accident. I don't know if he was like forgetting the CJJ rule set, but I think Wagner is just like one of the most aggressive jiu-jitsu
Super
guys.
aggressive. Let's call it what it is. I think he's dirty. I think he's like
he's not.
Homeboy, who's the forward on the Warriors?
Oh, Draymond Green.
Draymond Green.
Another reference. I thought you were going to say Husamar Polaris, the guy that.
That dude is dirty beyond the limit and has actually been disqualified for holding.
I thought you were going to go there, but you went Draymond Green.
I think Wagner Hocha doesn't do anything that would get him disqualified or kicked out, but he dances on the gray areas all the time.
Yeah, he uses
where someone would try to pass your guard by lifting you. I think he'd rub his knuckles into you. He'd rub his palm into you. Every little thing you could do.
You could see Ross's face getting red from certain smacks, but Ross wasn't going to say anything, and he didn't, it was fine. It wasn't anything too bad. I wouldn't have disqualified Wagner for anything, but he was super aggressive, went for it every time, and got the decision, and, rightfully so. I agreed with that.
Do you think you're biased in your dark horse selection because his name sounds like yours, and you've been called Ross before?
No, I think he's got fantastic leg work. I think nowadays, now that everyone's up on the leg locks, I think that the fad has reached a point where I'm not as interested to see leg lockers, and Ross Nichols has a lot of great leg entanglements that he does a lot of interesting work when he's down there. So I'm love looking at the technique, but at the same time I'm everyone's doing that now and everyone knows the defense, so it's almost like you almost have to go back to the basics, go back to the original stuff, the old school jiu-jitsu that works. And I think Ross is going to struggle. Maybe I'm going to have to revise my pick in the ADCC setting where a lot of the old school jiu-jitsu comes out.
Is there?
It's
but you also have to look at Craig Jones, who recently won by old school, rear naked, but then also by new school, heel hook.
The thing is with Craig, I think Craig is super well-rounded. Craig can do jiu-jitsu as an old school type competitor, but he can bring the new school too. It's kind of like Gordon Ryan in that sense.
Agreed.
Where they can do it all, and that's just well-coached stuff.
We talked a little bit about TriStar with Rory earlier. There's another TriStar guy in Polaris 9. Who was it?
Oh, Ethan Krellenstein. Yeah, and I think he's TriStar, but he's also Henzo Danaher. I think he jumps.
They go back and forth.
Yeah.
The only time they've ever had beef is when it's GSP versus Matt the Terracera.
Oh,
because
yeah.
Matt Terra
Matt was a Henzo
predates
guy.
him.
Yeah.
He predates Dana here.
Although now even Matt, Sarah, BJJ, and Henzo on good terms. I don't even know.
There are absolutely,
Yeah, okay.
absolutely.
He's got his own thing.
I heard a podcast the other day. I mean, they're separate.
Sarah
they're not
Longo,
equal, but they're separate.
Right. Ethan did amazing. Speaking of Ethan, I think he dominated. He was fighting I think he was an Irish black belt who well versed in leg locks and a lot of leg entanglements, and Ethan was around all of it. He dominated, took the back, had to hold the back for a long time. Ethan was doing a really good job defending the back. He kept moving. He had the smoothest leg transitions, like on the hook when he was not the hook, the triangle of the body. Every time Ethan moved to one side to get out, he moved the leg immediately to the other side. And then he did it almost like instinctively without even like thinking about it. Like it was like drilled in him so much that he got to the point where it was just like...
And were his arms moving at the same time?
Yeah, he was going after the neck while he was doing it. Yeah. It was like some crazy stuff.
Your brain's got to move that way.
Oh man, and Tom was helpless. He was sitting there, he was like, I don't know how to fucking get out of this move. Yeah. He was in that rear naked for 5 minutes before it was finally too much. And
I feel you.
And he got him. And I think Ethan's a monster. I think he's in 66 kilograms in the AUCC. I'm not sure if he's 77 or 66, but he's a definite monster. He's going to do really good.
Nice. And I think, yeah, go ahead.
But my favorite...
Yeah, the standout. Right?
My favorite standout thing from Polaris wasn't on the main card and was in the gi, which I know you're not the biggest gi fan.
I'm a man who's trained in the gi for 2 years, so I'm entitled to my opinion about...
Of course. No, I'm not saying right.
The kimono.
I personally, when I grapple, I don't have much experience in gi. I do no gi, and I like that aspect of it. And usually gi fights tend to be, a lot of stalling, and some perceive it as being boring. But the Tommy Langaker versus, what was the dude's name? I think it was Sebastian Broche, or I forget. Anyway, Sebastian Broche's, I think that was his name, he was a big time yoga guy, big guy in
yoga guy.
Yeah, huge. He actually started the whole yoga for BJJ thing.
Well,
I would look into that.
Well,
probably in the olden days.
Before Hicks and Gracie?
No, yeah. But I'm saying he's popularized it. Like,
okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, and he had some fantastic work, and he's well known in the community. Tommy just brought it to him. It was like the most aggressive gi match I've seen in a long time. They were constantly going after submissions. I would recommend it highly for anyone. Yeah. And Tommy looks amazing. I think that he called out Keenan after the fight. And I would love it. I would watch
American Jiu-Jitsu gi specialist.
If it's Keenan versus Tommy Langaker, would be an awesome, awesome gi match to watch.
Yeah, I think just because you kind of pointed out my thoughts on it, all I could say is it's not impossible to have exciting matches in the gi, but going back to all of our discussions about rule sets and incentives, the gi incentivizes people to stall. Gordon Ryan, one of the best on the planet, if not the best right now, says that blue belts in the gi, if they want to and they intend to, can just hold him. Whereas if it's no gi, he's subbing 99% of the people on the planet. So that to me says a lot. The mindset of individuals can overcome the systems. As we said, there's a balance between individuals and systems, between rule sets and incentives. So it's not that people in the gi are prohibited from having awesome fights. I mentioned Chrome before earlier. He always had exciting fights. I'm sure Craig Jones and Gary Tonin were amazing in the gi. I'm sure Dylan Dennis, for all the hate he gets, was great in the gi. Keenan Cornelius is known as a great gi fighter.
I think it's a good intro. It's a good way to learn jiu-jitsu,
Super. Edwin Najimi has a video series from in the gi, but all of the moves he teaches, darces, triangles, rear nakeds, they're all things that you could do outside of the gi.
Of course.
So it ultimately depends on your decision making when you're in the gi or the kimono, but I think it lends itself, as well as the IBJJF point system, in addition to the gi, lends itself to more boring matches than a no gi match.
I think if they don't really often do this rule set, but if they did gi where you submission only, there'd be a lot of fun.
Like the High Rollers BJJ event we went to.
Yes, gi submission only is great. I'm into that.
I'm more interested in it. I'll say that.
I know that you're forever going to be no gi all day, but
worldwide.
I think that for me that was the best match of the night at Polaris.
That's good, man. That's good. I'm done on my end. Anything we missed? Any last comments, concerns, questions?
I feel like we covered a lot of the events that happened, but still managed to only scratch 10% of all the events that took place this past weekend.
Hey man, it's just
Slowly but surely
two guys and 2 cents.
We're gonna get
Maybe 4 cents.
We're gonna get to the point where we cover everything we want to cover to the extent that we want to cover it. But for now, I think that was a good effort.
All right, Khalo Hafez.